Wi-Fi 6 webinar. So happy Pi Day. I don't know if anyone celebrates it except for those in elementary school, but I wish I had some pie. So ready to get started here. Within this webinar, get the end user perspective on your Wi-Fi network's availability and performance. And NetBeez flips the script and lets you see what the end users are experiencing, which hopefully many of you already know that as customers, and if not, then we're going to show you a little bit more about NetBeez today. So for our agenda, we will be going over the Wi-Fi monitoring challenges, agents, which includes Wi-Fi sensors and endpoints, testing capabilities, Wi-Fi metrics and tools, sensor deployment, and then followed by the Q&A and then the Amazon gift card raffle. And today, your presenters will be myself and Panos from our engineering department, and I'm going to hand it over to Panos at this point.
Thank you, Jess, and welcome everyone to today's webinar. Nice to see everybody here. And let's get started and take a step back and think about why we're here today, right? Most of us are network engineers or Wi-Fi engineers, right? And no matter how good of a job we do with the design of our Wi-Fi networks pre-production, right, and our efforts to take as many variables as possible into making our decisions before going to production. Once we go into production and have everything deployed, we're going to have issues, right? That's kind of the nature of the business. And the challenging part for administrators, architects, Wi-Fi engineers is how to detect and troubleshoot these Wi-Fi issues, right? So, of course, we have some visibility from the controller's perspective, the access point perspective, and all modern Wi-Fi vendors give some type of monitoring and status of your Wi-Fi network. But nonetheless, we still rely on the users often to detect issues for us, right? So we're gonna get some tickets, and we're gonna have some vague complaints about slowness, about cannot access the internet, cannot connect to the Wi-Fi, etc., right? And we all know how this looks like. We have to go troubleshoot, we have to talk to users. So there's a gap in the Wi-Fi monitoring space that doesn't capture the user experience. And many of you know how NetBeez does it, right? We use sensors around your network. So the sensors are another client, another station on the Wi-Fi network that capture Wi-Fi metrics like signal strength, link quality, but also run synthetic testing to capture and simulate user experience, like measure latency, HTTP response time, DNS response time, DHCP response time, etc., right? That combined with tests like bandwidth testing can give us a pretty clear picture of what the user experience is. We use these metrics and data points to collect historical, create baselines, detect issues, but also when it comes to troubleshooting, we have data to understand what was the baseline of the network, if an issue started and at what point, and then do all this through a dashboard without having to rely to users' input and feedback during troubleshooting. So we've been doing this for a while now. We'll be doing Wi-Fi sensor-based monitoring for 10 years. And today, we started with Wi-Fi, Wi-Fi 5 back in the day. And now today, we have our general availability for our Wi-Fi 6 sensor. It looks very similar with the existing sensor, right? So I have one here. You could tell maybe some small difference in the ports and everything, but it's very similar to the existing sensor, I would say, right? But of course, the hardware internally is different, support Wi-Fi 6, and also to give some additional capabilities, right? So it's based on Raspberry Pi platform, 4 gigabytes of memory, and 8 gigabytes of disk. We use the ComFast 953AX for the Wi-Fi as a Wi-Fi adapter, and this has a gigabit Ethernet. So apart from, of course, the gigabit Ethernet, apart from using it for connectivity with the dashboard and the server, you can also use it to run static tests on the Wi-Fi, on the wired interface. So with a Wi-Fi sensor, you have the ability to measure and monitor both your Wi-Fi and your wired network. Can be powered by PoE and PSU, and the dimensions are these, as you can see. So this is available today. Any new customers, but existing customers, of course, can order and complement the existing monitoring solution. And you can mix and match, of course, existing Wi-Fi 5 sensors with this new sensor on your dashboard. So, of course, with Wi-Fi 6, we get WPA3, right, for authentication. And of course, we support all the previous protocols, you know, of course, standard things like PMF, for example, right, required, optional, or disabled, depending on what your configuration is. You can configure the appropriate Wi-Fi profile. And if you have a profile that, for example, you have, again, a mix of sensors that are Wi-Fi 5 and Wi-Fi 6, even if you apply a Wi-Fi I would say 6 WPA3 profile on a Wi-Fi 5 sensor does support it. The sensor, of course, detects that, you know, can support only WPA2, and then it can adjust so it can, you know, still connect and authenticate with your network with a common Wi-Fi profile. So now going a little bit back to the static monitoring aspect of NetBeez, just to refresh everybody's memory, right? So how do we capture user experience? We do that by running synthetic tests. We have two groups of tests. The real-time tests are the ones listed there to measure latency, DNS, routing with trace router path analysis. We call them real-time because they run on a specific like kind of interval, 5 seconds for a latency test, 30 for a DNS test, right? While the scheduled tests run on you have the ability to run them on a specific schedule. You can say, for example, I'm going to run a couple of speed tests overnight when there is no load on the network to create a baseline, understand where my network is when there is no traffic, and then maybe another 3 or 4 tests during business hours to get that baseline, but also detect issues if something goes wrong, right? So these metrics here are used to capture the user experience in terms of performance. And then on the Wi-Fi side, the metrics we capture are how much traffic is going in and out of your Wi-Fi interface, signal strength, link quality, what bitrate has been associated, negotiated with the access point. And you also have the ability to do an SSID scan around the sensor to understand how what the RF environment looks like. In this case, this can be useful for scenarios where you have maybe an office building in or an office in a big office building, and you have, of course, neighbors, and you want to understand how what's going on around your space there, and adjust your Wi-Fi infrastructure. Another aspect of Wi-Fi monitoring is the ability to run periodic full cycles of association, authentication, DHCP, and .1x if it's included in the authentication part with infrastructure. Because you may know that, for example, once a client establishes a connection with the network, even if you run out of let's say, you run out of DHCP address in your pool, you won't know that until you try to disconnect and reconnect, right? So we give this ability here to go through the full cycle every 15 minutes, 30 minutes, you can choose the time period. But also this type of feature gives you the ability to monitor multiple SSIDs. So you can monitor up to 4 SSIDs. Let's say you have your corporate, you have your guest, your IoT, and maybe another one. And you can set it up so that each agent can go on a round robin fashion, monitor for 15 minutes, your guest, 15 minutes, your corporate, so on and so forth, right? So within an hour, you have the aspect of all four SIDs on your dashboard here. And finally, packet capture. This works on an ad hoc basis. This already exists on NetBeez Wi-Fi 5 sensors, and we extend that to Wi-Fi 6 and 6 gigahertz. So you can pick a sensor, and then depending on its ability, you can run a packet capture by choosing specific channels, bands, and channel width for specific, let's say, time window and interval, and then channel hopping interval, and then download the pickup on your laptop to open it and analyze with your favorite packet capture pickup analyzer, like WireGuard or sorry. Yeah, so your favorite packet capture analyzer. And finally, I'm gonna give you an overview of what installation looks like depending on different scenarios. We work closely with customers from the, I would say, POC phase all the way to production to understand their needs and deploy a solution that works for them given their constraints. In the most simple case where you have maybe a remote site that you just want to measure some basic connectivity and availability of Wi-Fi and wired, I would say, performance, you can think of a scenario where you deploy a single sensor, right? So you connect to your Wi-Fi network there, local Wi-Fi network, and runs and captures all the types of tests we just talked about and all the metrics in terms of like Wi-Fi, signal strength and link quality, but also like user experience, right? And then we got the next level here where you're gonna test in more detail, I would say a campus type of network where you wanna capture as much of the user experience as possible. Then you can look at the floor plan and decide and understand, like based on where your access points are, how you can deploy sensors in a way that can capture different user experience performance and go through all this monitoring is going to give you authentication, association times, and in a way that makes sense in terms of what are your constraints and needs, right? And finally, in the more detailed solution, when we look at critical areas of your network, this can vary. For example, you can think as a boardroom, a very critical area, or you may think as a special case, a big auditorium where you have at peak times hundreds of users that may overwhelm your Wi-Fi network, right? So in that solution, we may go in a very detailed installation where for specific areas we may capture on a per access point type of performance, and this is going to give you a type of monitoring that is designed to capture everything that makes sense for your installation. And now I'm going to give you a quick demo of what the dashboard looks like. Many of you are familiar with this. So on this specific example, of course, we're focusing on the Wi-Fi 6 sensors, but I'll give you an example where I have a combination of Wi-Fi 5 sensor here with 3 Wi-Fi 6 sensors. And then there's also, like, of course, a VM sensor here in our data center, and also a Debian type of sensor also in our data center. So I don't want to get into much detail, but NetBeez supports all kinds of sensors to cover every corner of your network, Docker agents, VM hardware for your WAN network. And of course, we, a couple of years ago, introduced our remote worker agent for Windows and Mac. So focusing here on the Wi-Fi 6 sensors, let's look a little bit what the dashboard looks like. So I'm running here my, synthetic testing to Google, to 111, and on my gateway. So I'm doing this for the gateway specifically on my wired and Wi-Fi network, right? As I mentioned earlier, with the Wi-Fi sensor, you have the ability to measure both wired and wireless networks. This is a 6 gigahertz sensor, a Wi-Fi 6 sensor. So if I look at the wireless information here is, the 6 gigahertz band. I can see here the periodic disconnections and reconnections. I get authentication, association, and DHCP times. And this is WPA3 PSK sensor, as opposed to this one, which is a WPA3 EAP sensor. And on this dashboard, as I mentioned earlier, I also have like a Wi-Fi 5 sensor that uses WPA2 in this case, right? And also a Wi-Fi 6 sensor that is on a 5 gigahertz band, right, with WPA EAP. So again, we use the ability for existing customers to combine two types of sensors, but new customers are going to be getting the Wi-Fi 6 sensors. And with that, I'm going to open it to Q&A.